Hello, everyone, and welcome back to This is a Woman podcast. I am your host, Sophia Lori, and today we actually have something different for you guys. We are having Bethany Hamilton. I'm sure many of you know her as Soul Surfer on the podcast today, but what it actually is a live interview from the California Family Council Life, Family, Liberty Gala that was just last week. And so this is going to be the live interview of me interviewing Bethany on stage at that event. So that's why you might hear some applause, some noises like that, different things. But Bethany and I, we dive into all things motherhood, all things life. We dive into her testimony, her story. We also dive into her having to take a stand to protect female sports when she was put in that situation with World Surf League allowing males to compete in the female category. So we are going to dive into all that. It is a wonderful conversation with Bethany. But before we get into it, I want to make sure you guys know her full bio. So Bethany Hamilton is recently inducted into the Surfers Hall of Fame and deemed by Sports Pro Media as one of the world's most marketable athletes. Bethany Hamilton is a wife, mother, and a professional surfer from Hawaii whose best-selling autobiography was featured in the major motion picture Soul Surfer. She is known for surviving a traumatic shark incident at age 13, losing her left arm, and for overcoming that huge life change to ultimately becoming one of the best women surfers in the world, who has accomplished far more than she ever dreamed with one arm. Now, through her social media, her documentary, and Unstoppable Life program, Bethany is an epic role model and life coach who is passionate about helping you live unstoppable too. I'm so excited for you guys to hear this conversation between Bethany and I. She is just absolutely amazing. So, with that, let's dive into it.
Aloha. I must get one thing clear. I'm actually Bethany Dirks nowadays. But we keep the public name just because it's so ingrained. But yeah, it's lovely to be here tonight.
Okay. Well, Bethany Dirks, why don't you tell us a little bit about your family before we kick things off then?
Yes, oh my gosh, yes. I am married to my husband, Adam Dirks. He would be here right now, but we are on Portugal time. We flew in from Europe a couple days ago, and our children are very jet lagged, so he took one for the team with my mother-in-law. And we have 4 children. Our eldest is Tobias, Wesley, Micah, and we got a daughter, Alea. And yeah, motherhood is such a joy. I think I always looked forward to motherhood, and I think that partially comes from my mom. Like, I really felt her enjoy motherhood, and just she was super adventurous and just there for me. She encouraged me in all the things, my faith, becoming a young woman, being an athlete. My mom was just amazing. My dad's amazing too. He was a super surf dad, always there for me. Had the good balance, not like that aggressive soccer dad, but just a great dad. And but yeah, so now to fast forward to be a mother, it is my joy and pride and my greatest work in life. We do a lot, but I would say my greatest time investment nowadays is with my 4 littles, and I love it. This morning, my highlight was Micah and Alea, our 2 youngest, running around like airplanes. I was getting a late lunch, so I was just sitting in our backyard where we're staying, and they were just being adorable, running around together, and yeah, that was my high of the day.
I don't know if you heard someone say sorry when you said aggressive soccer dad, but I did play soccer, and that was my father that did apologize.
Sometimes it works out. It depends on the child if they can handle it, But yeah, I'm grateful for the way my dad showed up for me. He was just there, but not too much. It came from me. I think the best of the best athletes have to want it themselves. And no matter how hard mom and dad push, like, you gotta want it.
Yes, absolutely. And something you've shared a lot about is the faith you have is because of your parents, but yet it kind of became your own in this journey. And I want to dive in to that, to the fact that, you were looking at becoming this really promising competitive surfer, which you did achieve. But at 13 years old, the tragedy hit. But only 3 weeks later, you were back surfing in the water, doing the unthinkable. How did you get through that with your faith in God?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I look at young Bethany, and even like I'm kind of inspired by her. I'm like, dang girl, like how'd you do that so fast? Like getting back out there in the ocean and charging so hard. And I am like a very driven athlete and like kind of human across the board. So I think that's just how God designed me. But I really had a passion for surfing. It was so much more than, say a sport. Like I did other sports growing up. I played soccer, did jiu-jitsu, dabbled with a little tennis. I loved just moving. Oh, I did competitive swim for a bit. So, I dabbled with a lot of sports, but surfing was like that deep love, the deep passion. And I think around 9 years old, I was like, I'm going to be, I'm aiming to be a world champ one day. Like, I don't know, I just had that drive. And then even surfing, you can kind of tell when someone's pretty young if they're gonna, be one of the top. Like other sports, baseball, you might not, there might be like a million really good baseball players and they might not all make it, but surfing, you can kind of tell. And I was definitely one of those girls, very hard to beat, like winning most events that I competed in at age like 10 to 13. And then at 13, the summer before I lost my arm, I finished second in the national title at 13 in the 18 and under division. So, it was heading in a good direction. I'm kind of losing track of what the original question was, but yeah, I just, so when I lost my arm, it felt like losing just a lot, I didn't think I was going to surf again. I didn't wake up thinking, oh, let's go surf. Like, I didn't know anyone who surfed with one arm, so this was very, just a shocking reality to wake up to. And thankfully, I had an inspiration from a friend who's still a friend today. His name is Mike Coots, and he actually learned how to surf with one leg. And that was the only kind of other, limb difference acquaintance my family had. And yeah, he was like, hey, he came and visited me in the hospital. He's like, I think you can surf with one arm. And so all I needed was a hint of inspiration to run with it. And then I was determined to just see if I could do it. And less than a month later, basically as soon as the doctor said I could get back in the ocean as far as healing, I was out there. And then my third wave, I popped up, rode it all the way to the beach. And then from there was just no turning back. And was just back doing what I love to do, and now just having to do it differently and adapting and figuring out creative ways. And it was very challenging. There was lots of tears along the way, and just some days I couldn't even get out to the lineup to catch the waves because just paddling was half as fast. And duck diving, getting out through challenging conditions. There was so many rough moments, and that's where my dad was really, it came in handy. He'd watch, and I'm sure it was painful for him to see me coming in frazzled and frustrated and tearful, but he designed the handle on my board. And yeah, over time I eventually went back to competing 4 months later. And I think that came from that kind of lifestyle. I was always used to competing. This is where all my friends were. My family, we'd travel, hop inter-island and compete, and it was just very much a part of life. And I made the finals, the first event I competed in. And then I went on to go to the nationals, made the finals, and then I won the national title 2 years later with one arm. So, so it was just so amazing to kind of go from a place of what's life gonna hold now to actually we're gonna keep on the same trajectory. And, you know, my career didn't go maybe in the success that I had as a, 12-year-old. I wanted to be a world champ. I wanted to, be in the top tier. And my competitive career was somewhat average, but there was definitely some highlights. And, I took down some world champs along the way and some wild card situations. And I made my documentary Unstoppable. If you want to check it out, it kind of highlights my surf career journey from childhood to motherhood. And it's just been such an incredible journey, and here I am with 4 children, and I'm still trying to surf as good as ever. We just had an awesome trip to Indonesia. Did a month there just surfing and taking my children surfing. I was off my phone for about a month. It was just amazing and loving life.
I do want to touch on, you said your success as surf might have not been what you expected it to be.
Right.
But I think your success for the kingdom has been far greater than I'm sure you could have ever imagined.
Yes. No, for sure. And that's why I highlight the surfing aspect, because it's like you can see such an awful thing can truly turn into something so beautiful. And God has taken, that horrible situation and truly brought so much good and beauty out of it, and has brought me closer in my faith. And I didn't elaborate as much as I should have earlier, but yes, I had faith as a young girl. My mom would pray with me and read the Bible with me a lot, and my dad was adamant that we would go to church. And as I grew up, slowly my faith kind of evolved in its own, different maturity levels, I guess. Even though God calls us to be like the baby and the child, to have that childlike, reliance on God. And at times, I definitely feel that when life's feeling really hard and rough and painful. You almost go back to that childlike state of okay, God, whatever you have for me. It's just been so beautiful to see how God has taken something that most would, never wish upon their life, and turned it into something so beautiful. And I love the life that I have had thus far, and just looking forward to more.
Absolutely. And then, you're getting back into surfing. You're really doing the unimaginable. And then you move forward with Soul Surfer coming out as a book and a movie. What led you to sharing such a personal journey with ultimately the whole world at such a young age?
Right. Yeah, that was a journey in itself. This was before social media was such a big thing. If you went viral, it was a very a memorable viral, whereas now virality is kind of quick-lived, and we're all moving on to the next real quick. But my story went so viral overnight, and then once I started surfing again, it went doubly viral. And for some reason, my parents let me go on this little media tour. I don't know what they had in mind, but they decided we're going out there and we're gonna share your story, love. So I'm going on Oprah. I have no clue who this woman is. I'm just a little island girl in barefoot slippers, the first time I've ever had makeup on, and going on the Oprah show. And yeah, but there's just the cutest little moments, people asking are you gonna surf again? I think I know. That was before I had surfed, in one of my first interviews. And the interviewee was a little kind of that quintessential interviewer vibes. And I was kind of this shy, but confident, a little snark in there, little girl. And yeah, and then, when we started to work on my book, I very much so had a heart for other people. Ever since I was a young girl, I was waiting till I could go on a mission trip with my church. I had to reach a certain age to join the group. My parents would buy a well for people during Christmas, even though they lived a very humble life and very humble jobs, so to say. And so I think I grew up with this world biblical view of loving your neighbor. And so when I lost my arm, I even saw this like opportunity because I started receiving letters from people all over the world saying like, if you can surf again, I can get back on my board, whatever that looked like in their life. And it was so beautiful. So then fast forward, we went to write Soul Surfer. And in my mind, I'm like, I'm never going to have to do an interview again. People can just read the book. I don't have to tell the story. My little brain, my young brain really thought that. So I really did not like the fame aspect of everything going on. But little did I know we're going on a book tour. And that's where you go and tell your story 100 times over and promote the book. And then later on, we go on and do the movie, and then we go on a movie tour. So I was kind of like 1 foot in, 1 foot out. The foot that was out was like the one that was going in the ocean, my happy place. We'd fly to New York City and then come home, and I'm like, straight to the beach, like, get me out of the city. I still feel like that to this day. And yeah, it's just been so amazing, though, to see, someone could be watching Toy Story in the hospital, but instead they're watching Soul Surfer in their dark hour. And to me, that was worth all the interviews in the world that younger Bethany did not necessarily enjoy. And so it's been such a journey, one that I could never have painted myself.
And here you are still 12 years after the book, and we're calling you up to still do interviews and talk about it. But again, I know there's so many young women in this room that have really found their faith in God because of your story, because of what they read. And, Soul Surfer, it has had this ripple effect. And what now, being older and 12 years out of that book coming out, what do you hope that it applies to young girls? What effect do you want it to have on them?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I love being able to share my faith, and I've been doing it for years through speaking, through my writings. I have a few books out for young women. Like one book I wrote was called Body and Soul, A Girl's Guide to a Fit, Fun, and Fabulous Life, but through faith, super integrated through it, and encouraging girls to take care of their health and just grow in different areas, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and through living healthy. And so just doing projects like that along the way. Had a mother-daughter program, a mentorship program for a while, and lately, as of more late, my husband and I launched a podcast. So we're kind of touching on a lot of different topics, but I'm particularly passionate about faith, health, family, homeschooling, and culture. And so, we're just kind of running with wherever God leads us. And at the end of the day, though, just showing up each and every day for our children. My parents live in our guest house, and our podcast studio is in our house. So the children run back to Grandpa and Grandma's while we record real quick, and then they're right back in our midst, a few minutes later. So our life is very unique. We're very integrated together as a family. We do everything together. Our children know the ins and outs of each and every day of what we're up to, and it's just been such an amazing journey. And I'm loving, I still struggle with fame to this day. I still don't like attention. I'd be happy to be in the back, being the videographer, I really have never been one to need attention. And so there's elements of life that I really value our privacy at home, and the simple things like running in the yard and being airplanes, things like that. And where we live, I can always find a private beach if I want, and things like that. And so there's definitely a lot of sacrifice with the life that we've chosen to live, and that also simultaneously that God has given us. But I see all these young girls, and I hope that I can just have an impact along their way. One of my greatest passions is to inspire young women to look forward to motherhood, because I think that's another attack in culture is no, go and do this, that, and that. And, motherhood could give or take. And so that's something I'm like secretly trying to promote just by social media and whatnot. For me, wanting to be a mom came on very strong, very naturally. And like I said earlier, I think it's because I really felt my mom's joy for motherhood in her journey as a mom. And so fast forward, I was filming my documentary. I got pregnant, on accident, so to say. And I wasn't stoked. I was super disappointed. I was like, this is not the timing I wanted. It took me 4 or 5 months to get pumped or get welcoming of my baby. As soon as I found out I was having a boy, I got pretty excited. And once I met my baby, it was just that overwhelming, flooding joy of I will die for you sort of a love that nobody can truly explain with words. And I felt kind of ashamed of, that season of just not feeling ready, not wanting that timing, not trusting God's will and timing for my life. But I also learned that, to empathize, so to say, with my sister-in-law struggled very much. She didn't really look forward to motherhood. One of my best friends had the same reaction. And then you look out in the world and all the voices that are so negative towards motherhood, and even the meme world, sometimes it can be funny, but a lot of it is kind of derogatory. And there's a lot of just kind of, the quintessential is teenagers suck. That's what mothers are told. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be that way. I don't think of teenagers as awful. But I think there's a way to come alongside of your teenagers and serve them in a way that, brings out the beauty in that relationship. So I try to fill my life with moms who are speaking against the cultural norm, voices, so to say. And, of course, there's rough days in motherhood. Yesterday, I think all 4 of our children were in a super bad mood. And we all got in the car, and it was I think someone's about to lose an eye right now. And my children are amazing. They're so sweet. Everyone who meets them is wow, they're such incredible kids. But, they're human, too. They got sin natures, and some days are rough. And I busted out the lollipops, and the drive went smooth. So you got to have, the little things in the back pocket to survive those rough moments. But overall, I just, that's something I'm very passionate about. I really want to inspire our young generation to look forward to being parents and to not think of it as less than.
And at California Family Council, we truly recognize that motherhood does start at the moment of conception. We are pro-life
Right.
through and through. And just this past January, you spoke at the National March for Life in Washington, D.C. Unfortunately, a thing that people call controversial.
Yes.
But in reality, we're just standing for biblical truth. We're standing for scientific truth. And
yeah, that was interesting. So speaking at the March for Life, I think I lost 70,000 followers that week. But I simultaneously gained, 50 or something. So, but it was just so interesting to see people just get so riled up. And I think, we pull back the bigger pictures. My worldview is not guided by my emotions or, other people's preferences, but it's guided by the Bible and the Word of God. And, God created man in His image. And He said that it was good. He created man, and He said we are good and beautiful and of value and worth. And so when society goes and says the opposite and is, culling children, it's a dark place. And so I think, as we talk about, being someone in the stadium fighting the battle, allowing God to fight that battle on our behalf, but like, listening to his lead and call in our life, whatever that may look like on a day-to-day basis, whether it's just serving your own family, speaking into your children's lives, repenting from our sin, looking for the life that God calls to us, and sharing that with our neighbor. And so, yeah.
And not only did you speak at the March for Life and make a very clear stance about children being the greatest joy of your life and true wealth in this world, but you've also aligned yourself with pro-life companies such as Every Life. Why do you believe it matters to partner with companies that align with our values?
Yes, I absolutely love what Public Square and Every Life are doing. It's just overwhelming to think that majority of the diaper companies in America are pro-abortion, and I think Every Life might be the only company, diaper company that is not, pro-abortion. And some of these companies might be overt, but it might be just they support their, employees to go and get an abortion sort of thing. And so I just think the work that everyone doing, it's just been such a joy. I'm like, hun, this is the coolest thing ever to be able to promote such an incredible brand. And it's beyond the promotion, the work they're doing behind the scenes, they're so quick to act when a traumatic event hits, and they're on it. They're doing business in a way that almost no companies out there are doing it. And so it's just amazing to take our morals and values and mix it into our everyday life and the diapers we put on our babies and the money, the dollars we spend. And yeah, I'm just super stoked to be able to, we went to Target once in the last few years, and it was we were on a trip and we needed one item in particular. We were looking for a snow sled, and it was literally the only store in this town. And I was just we avoid that place at all costs. But we happened to go, and we did get the snow sled. So I did spend a few dollars at Target, but try not to make that a public thing. And try to be more organized and just avoid those places if we can.
Well, again, at California Family Council, we are so grateful that you are so bold on the stance for life, especially how you know that it is. We're not standing with emotions or what other people are saying. We're standing with biblical truth. And just so all of you here tonight are aware of what California looks like on the issue of life, our state of California does allow for abortion up to the moment of birth. Not only do they do that, if a woman wants to fly in from another state to kill her third trimester baby, California pays for that. They pay for the flights, the Ubers, the hotel stays, the food. Not only that, California, our taxpayer dollars, will pay for babysitting of the already born children in one room while the abortion is happening in the other room. And so, yes, people say, don't talk about life, don't talk about abortion. These are political issues. I hope your takeaway from these conversations tonight, from everything you're hearing, is these are not political issues. These are biblical issues the world has taken under the guise of politics to get Christians to be quiet, and we cannot be quiet anymore. And so, before we dive into the next thing, you were a boy mama, but you got your girl. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I was totally designed to be a boy mom, and I'm such a tomboy. I love surfing and just running hard and go to the skate park and just do all the boy things. But then we got pregnant with our fourth, and I actually was competing while pregnant in the North Shore of Oahu in a WSL surf league event. And it was that time when I first found out they were going to start allowing males in the female division. But I wait till I find out, until my baby comes out, then I find out if it's a boy or girl. So I had no clue if I was having a boy or girl, but I was like, man, if I'm having a girl and I stayed silent on this topic, I would be so mad at myself. And I knew I would speak up. I was just kind of waiting for it to hit surfing. It is a big energy give to go against the powers of darkness and evil. And it's definitely a mental stress. It was a lot to kind of tackle that while pregnant. And I found that if I just post and walk away, that was the best. And I let my husband look at stuff and monitor whatever. But yeah, and then when my daughter came out, I was like, oh my gosh, imagine her having to compete against guys. It shouldn't be in any sport, but when I think of surfing, the dominance difference is just incredible. I think of big wave surfing and just surfing across the board. The gap is so big. I shouldn't even be talking about this because that's a part aside from the fact. But, you still think of things like that. But yeah, now I have a daughter and she's so adorable. This morning, I woke up to her yelling at me, you're not sharing. You're not sharing. I co-sleep with her. So I was I couldn't understand fully what she was saying. And she was yelling at me that I wasn't sharing. And then she eventually I figured it out. And she was like, oh, I'm not sharing my pillow. And she literally propped her head smack dab in the middle of my pillow and conked back out and slept another couple hours. I was awake at that point though. My sleep was done after her yelling at me. But she's just a hilarious little hard charger. She's super athletic. The other day, my husband caught her teetering on a staircase. Imagine a little 2-year-old about to fall backwards. And she does a jump squat backwards and lands in a squat on both feet. So we'll see where this girl goes with her athleticism.
There we go. And on the issue of what happened with the World Surf League, so we saw in 2023, you faced something many of the girls here have firsthand faced, and they introduced these rules to allow males into the women's division. But I want to note that they actually had asked the athletes all to sign contracts to not criticize their policies before introducing this.
Yes.
What was going on through your mind when it was introduced that males are now allowed in the women's category and they just had you guys sign contracts not to criticize their policies?
That was a sneaky backdoor move. So prior to the start of the season, they had all the girls and males on tour sign a contract. You're not allowed to badmouth the World Surf League in any fashion, and it was probably up to their determining, they could determine if it was bad mouth or not. And so when the news came out, all the athletes are they're basically losing their career. They would get kicked out off tour and fined $10,000. And so on top of that though, I think a lot of the athletes, even if that wasn't in place, it is a lot to speak up. I think a lot of them would probably have remained silent regardless. But, as you mentioned, a lot of these girls have faced a lot of emotional turmoil, going against the current, so to say. And even I felt it. I was like, whoa, I'm going to have to go start kickboxing so I can have some self-defense when I'm out in public. I was kind of scared because it was so aggressive, people wishing death upon you over this topic and going against the grain, so to say. But yeah, the World Surf League, there's a lot they're doing that I disagree with, but that is a major one, and it's unfortunately still in place. There isn't any males on tour, but if there were, it would, not be good. And yeah, I knew that I had, it was, I didn't have to, but I knew that I was gonna, it was my time to shine, basically, as soon as they announced that. I'm like, okay, here we go, let's just go do our thing and say no, this is not okay. And The thing that really disappointed me, though, is like, there's a lot of people that have a big name in the sport, so to say, that could have spoken up. Like, be off tour, former world champs, other athletes that are not on tour. It's pretty much crickets from the entire surfing community. There's maybe like a handful of people that spoke out, and like, to me, it's really disappointing to not see men speaking out on behalf of the women, because I believe that God designed men to be the women's protector and the leader, guider, and so, I see some bigger issues within society of like, it's not these young girls' job to fight against this mission in my mind. While it's great that they are, I don't think it's their job to solve the problem. And maybe it's good, for them to speak up and like say no, especially for press and whatnot and for their peers. But at the end of the day, I look at it as the father, the head of the household, the head of society, to go up against this darkness and, work on behalf of the ladies. And so that was something that really stood out to me. I was like, none of the males who have a big voice within surf are even speaking up for the girls. And they all were so against it. I was in like a private group chat with all the tour athletes, and they were all fuming behind the scenes in private, but nothing was really done, so.
And I see a lot of men sitting in this room tonight. And yes, you guys saw 20 amazing young women get up on the stage, for some speaking out, some leading walkouts, some suing even the state of California over this nonsense. And I know the men in this room are amazing men, and so we just want to encourage you.
Yeah.
Please continue, and please start, if you have not yet, to stand up for the women, stand up for the girls. They deserve to have their dads, honestly, blocking the locker room door if a male is trying to go change with their daughter. And so you spoke out about it, and I actually want to read the direct quote from what you posted on social media.
I don't even remember at this point.
Yes. And you said, male-bodied athletes should not be competing in female sports, period. When you hit post, was that one of those moments where you handed your phone to your husband and you're like, here you go? What, did you expect an uproar to come from that? Like, what were you expecting?
Yeah, my first post I did was like a longer form video, and I kind of glanced at the comments, and then I was like, this is too much for me, I'm out. And so then I just didn't even look again. I was also pregnant, so I'm like trying not to be super emotionally, distraught. Like, that's not what you need while you're pregnant. So, but yeah, it's just so crazy to see how aggressive culture is, and how like, that's something about Charlie Kirk that like, he's doing it in debate form. Like, he's debating, like, this is how society should be. We should be able to converse and debate and talk back and forth regardless of our differences. And that's something I really appreciated about him. Like, I always think, as a homeschooling mom, my mind's always like thinking about what do we need to provide for our children to thrive in life. And I'm like, I think debate is something super important. Like, I want them to be in that setting so that they can do it in a way that doesn't become like screaming or, like getting so like debate without getting hyper emotional. Maybe there's still some emotions underneath, but we learn how to like handle those and debate in a healthy way. But I don't,
Yeah, and something I want to touch on, because when these different sports leagues, different schools, CIF, when they start to allow males into girls' sports, sometimes the door is wide open, sometimes they put policies in place, well, the male has to undergo this, or things have to happen. It's not okay on any level. But something that the World Surf League did is that they, in their guidelines, they required men to lower testosterone for 12 months before they could then compete with females. did you think that was enough? Or?
That's crazy to me. Yeah, there was one male surfer in particular who's the most famous, like, trans male surfer who's now competing as a female, and he's in the longboard division. But he went and won a male contest. Like, he was in the male division, and he won. 2 years later, he's competing in the female division, and he won. And I'm like, y'all are crazy for cheering this on. Like, this is ludicrous. And so there was just like crazy things like that. But something else that stood out to me about this guy in particular is he was on some sort of hormone replacement. I don't know all the technical terms of it, but you could see his health deteriorating. And as like, for me, like, I am very passionate about health. And so, as we talk about like young children receiving these drugs to hinder their body's natural growth, it's literally killing them quicker and making them sick. And that just makes me so angry and so frustrated. And so you see this grown man in a span of like a few years, he looks so much worse. Like, it's an apparent change. And so there's so much attached to this movement that I disapprove of. But yeah, that was ludicrous to see this guy go from like winning the men's event to like 2 or 3 years later winning the female division. I'm like, and there's literally girls cheering him on. I'm like, y'all are being brainwashed in the most strange way.
Yeah. I truly believe this is going to go down as the biggest medical scandal in our time here on Earth. And I want to touch real quick for those of you in the crowd that maybe don't know what is really being pushed behind this agenda, because not only are the girls being harmed, the boys are being brainwashed. They're putting themselves in a place to make their bodies hurt, and it's going both ways. The girls are being harmed that are falling down this line of this transgender ideology. We have here in California, Chloe Cole. She is a detransitioner. In the state of California, at about 12 years old, she believed she was a boy. She was immediately put on hormones and started the process to try to transition. She then later recognized what she was doing wrong by the time she was about 17, 18, and went on the path of detransitioning. By this point, it was legal for her in the state of California at 15 years old to get a double mastectomy. And now she recognized, wait, I am a woman, and it's this beautiful thing. And she actually recognized it when she was learning more about motherhood. So she thought, gosh, I hope I can actually get pregnant one day after everything I've done to my body. But if I do, I will never breastfeed my children because of what the state of California allowed to happen. And the state of California also told her parents, do you want a dead daughter or an alive son? So they manipulated her parents as well, because the stats do show mental health decreases post trying to transition. And as Christians, the first chapter of the first book of the Bible states that God made us male and female. And if we cannot publicly be bold about that truth, what else in the Bible would we stand for? But sometimes there is what maybe seems in the moment a loss for standing for truth. Later, I think we see how God uses things. But Rip Curl, they had sponsored you for nearly a quarter century.
Yeah.
And then that all went away when you said males do not belong in women's sports.
Right. Yeah, that was super sad. Like, just not the way I saw the partnership ending, because I started surfing as a Rip Curl team brand, ambassador at 9 years old, and then fast forward, I had like a 5-year contract, and I think it was, to go till I was 35, which is my age now, and I was like, okay, I'm not down to support males and female surfing. So I went public with that, and they didn't really lip too much. But then they gave me a heads up, like, hey, we have a trans man in the next upcoming bikini campaign. And I was like, you guys really should not do that. Like, don't do it. It's not the path. I told the CEO, like, do not do this. And it was that guy who had won the surf contest, and then he won the girls division later on. And he's like probably about 40, so very like manly man too. So it's just, I'm like, you guys, I cannot promote this to the young girls. Like, no, we're not going there. And so I actually asked them to terminate the contract early. And unfortunately, I had had such a bad contract written out for me. My sporting agency, Octagon, did not do a good job of managing my contract, and I'm not a contract reader. But I learned, oh my goodness, these young athletes need better agencies behind them, because these agencies don't give a hoot about what their athletes are actually signing. So I ended up having to be silent for 2 years about that. And so there was public speculation as to what happened, but I myself could not speak about it. So now I'm free to speak. So we're going to record a podcast on this soon and kind of give all the juicy details and just talk about that season and everything that happened. But it was so sad to see like the company, and it didn't turn out good for Rip Curl. And you know, the guy was in his bikini. I'm like, are you going to have like the 12-year-old girl in her matching bikini right next to him? Like, this is not good. Like, this is not where things should go. And I think Rip Curl ended up losing a lot of money because of that. They were like the first surf company to kind of like go big with that ad campaign. And so, yeah, it was a sad part. And there was definitely like some financial stresses during that time, because it was also like recovering from COVID, and we lost like a lot of partnerships in that season. Like everyone got like crickets on us. But it was worth it. And like, I'm like, you know, once I got over the initial shock, I was like, okay, the Lord will provide. Like, you know, anytime we start fearing, you know, you're not living in faith. So there was definitely a little window of like fear, like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, we got to hustle hard and figure out, finances and whatnot. But yeah, that was just such a bummer to kind of like part paths with such a long term. Like, I have so many sweet memories with that brand and like the things we did along the years. And but at the end of the day, there's no way I'm promoting this male guy in a bikini to all these young girls. So you all just don't buy a Rip Curl, please.
There we go.
I'm very much an entrepreneur. We've been talking about launching some sort of surf beach lifestyle brand. So we've been talking about it for a few years. So that's usually how it goes. We talk for a few years and then we eventually activate. So we might activate sometime soon.
There we go. I also want to encourage you all, when you're maybe in your career or in school or wherever you're at, and you see the injustice of male and female spaces or whatever attack it is on our biblical values, speak out, be bold. Like Bethany said, God will provide, and we need to be standing for biblical truth. And I'm just going to throw this out there. We work with plenty of law firms that will take a pro bono case if you stand up against this. So stand up, reach out to us, and we will get this going. We have plenty of Californians that have already done that, and we need to keep this trend going. And so California, evidently, allows male and female athletics. We've talked about the girls, but what is your advice to the parents in the room that are firsthand watching their daughters endure this?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I don't know if I have all the answers, for sure I don't, but I think, getting in the mix, you might be the better person to answer this question, honestly. But my greatest advice is like, be there for your daughter. Talk to her about the situation. Talk to her about the realities. Paint the picture of like what's going on and what's already happened to other women in sports. And then make a game plan. Like, don't just like let her figure it out on her own. Like, this makes me so mad. Like, dads need to be involved in their daughters' lives, watching over, protecting, leading, guiding until eventually husband comes along. I feel like, beyond sports, it's like as a society, we've like kind of pulled back and just like let everything happen now. And it's very like just flowy, like let her go and be wild and free. I'm like, no, protect her. She doesn't know what choices she's making and the consequences that they will affect her for the rest of her life. So watch over her, lead her, guide her, protect her, not only in sports, but in every aspect of life. And so that would be my kind of push of advice. Like, I talk to my husband a lot about this because there's some things that in our life that have been really hard, and I'm like, this is a consequence of the leadership prior or the lack thereof. Even though they were a great human, like the lack of leadership it's very apparent, and the results of it are very apparent. And so remembering your role as a father, looking to God's word to guide you in that, with your whole household.
I just want to touch on the impact of when a father does stand up and do that. We had Leslie was one of the girls on stage today, a junior in high school, who led a student walkout just this past week. Her freshman brother spoke out at that walkout, saying he is not okay that his sister feels uncomfortable and he will stand beside her. And I asked her, I said, how does that make you feel knowing that your freshman brother in his first month of high school is like, I know.
I would be ball crying.
Like, it is his first month of high school, and he is choosing to publicly say, I'm not okay with my sister coming home from school every day uncomfortable because of the male in the restroom. And she first told me, well, even if it wasn't happening to me, he would have stood up for any of the girls here because my parents raised us with the fact that the men stand up for the women, the men defend the women, and they speak out for the women.
And I think, if you are a father and you're feeling a bit convicted right now, that's okay. Like, the next best step is to just move forward in a new direction and re-engage in the areas that maybe you've become disengaged. That's like God's grace is sufficient for us. Like, he works in and through all the challenges of life, all the mistakes along the way, or, the lack of action. And so not letting that, maybe the previous, elements of life or the way you've approached it, and maybe you're feeling like, oh man, maybe haven't been stepping in that role in the way that I should. And I just think there's always a way forward, and there's always like ways to adapt and adjust along the way. And I've been, feeling that in my own household with my husband, and I just have to be there to support him and be like, hey, hon, but this is what God says, and he's an amazing man. Like, I'm so grateful for him. He's an incredible father, and there's so much blessing in there. But there's also been a lot of challenge that we've had to work through, and so just not letting the challenges hold us back from stepping into our God-given roles better as we go forward.
Absolutely. And so you've endured loss, but you raised 4 kids, and you've stood up when it cost you the most. What scripture has kept you focused on God throughout all the different journeys of life?
Oh my goodness. Well, there's so much. I just think that over the last probably 5-10 years, just the way my faith has developed or blossomed in a new direction is just every day remembering the gospel, and every day should feel like Easter, that message of hope that Christ has died on the cross for our sins, and he brings new life, and he forgives us, and he's renewing us from the sin, the darkness, the hardship, the pain. And to me, that's what motivates me on an everyday level, is we've come out of a really heavy season. I would say, you could call it spiritual warfare, but just a lot of pain and hardship from every which direction, and I'm like, it's by the grace of God, like we're just putting forward. We're going to just keep going, and the Lord is with us, and he will never lead us nor forsake us. And like, that's my hope, and that's what gets me up. I really love surfing, and like getting in nature and the ocean is such a blessing. But like at the end of the day, the Lord is my rock, and that's what gives me the strength to keep going. And, there's been seasons of motherhood that have been hard, seasons of marriage that have been hard, seasons of business and finances that have been awful. And I think it's in those seasons that I then have to just rely on the Lord to carry me forward and carry my family forward, carry my husband forward, and help us through those tough times. And so I think it's just like focusing in on the grace of God, but also his guidance. Like I'm obsessed with the Proverbs. Like I think we all need to read that like at least once a year and just look to God's word to lead and guide us. So.
And Bethany, as we are about to send off the crowd into the arena, as Jonathan touched so much about what Charlie Kirk has done, what we want to equip these people with, and again, we don't know what your arena necessarily looks like, but it's your family. It's every day at your jobs. It's, again, Jonathan's not asking you to quit your job, but maybe you can help donate to organizations like California Family Council that are standing for these values while you're providing for your family. What is your final piece of advice you would love to leave this room of California warriors as we send them off to the arena?
Oh, I feel like we covered so much, and it's just been fun to share my life and hopefully be an encouragement. And I would just encourage our young people in particular to, allow your parents to speak into your life, or, getting a mentor along the way, opening up to the honest truth of the hard parts and not like just brushing things under the rug. Like we all need help along the way, and we need God in our life, and we need community and connection. Put the phone down more, put the tech down more, and connect together with your family, your loved ones. And, our first and foremost, is it stadium or gladiator? What's the theme?
The arena.
The arena. Our first and foremost arena is our own home. So let that be, the number one place of service and connection and doing life together. So thanks so much. And of course, I love what California Family Council is doing. So
yeah, let's all give Bethany a huge round of applause.
Thank you.